Hello, patrons! Welcome to your Creep Cult bonus episode. We are continuing with Alphabet Roulette this week. T for Tremors. And it was a blast. Am I right? Or am I right?
I mean, before we hop in, I just want to ask, how are you mother humpers?
We don't do that here.
we don't talk about
this is the area of despair.
we don't talk about our feelings. We don't talk about our...
Yeah. Or Bruno. It's not on the table. Okay. No, I'm good.
Yeah, no, I think we had a pretty good lineup of movies this week. If you end up checking out this episode and you enjoy it, go check out our regular episode where we're going to be talking about two movies that we have been wanting to talk about forever now, which are David Lynch's Dune. And Shane Censored's Primer. So yeah, go check that out. But let's talk about Tremors. And I'm going to give you guys some...
Starring John's dog.
John's dog, yeah. So I'll give you some background information on Tremors. Tremors came out in 1990, so before I was even a glimmer in my internet papa's life.
So this is after Bacon did Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
But is it before Footloose?
No.
I don't think so.
Footloose is also 80s.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually never seen Footloose.
Because I thought Footloose made him a bigger star.
Yeah, so he had a career because the reason he was so upset about this movie and didn't want to talk about it for so many years is that he felt that it potentially could have killed his career.
Oh.
Because it's one of those movies that had like middling reception when it came out and then has become obviously much more loved even by people like Siskel in reviews. Like
it has a posthumous like 88 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is for a horror comedy is like unheard of.
Yeah, and I think it was Siskel who his first review was like, "Oh, this is terrible," and then he came back to it a couple years later and was like, "No, actually, this movie is really fucking fun." Yeah. He said exactly that. But yeah, Tremors came out in 1990, so I definitely grew up with this. It was directed by Ron Underwood. The only other movie that two of the other movies that stand out to me from Ron Underwood are City Slickers, which came out on the heels of this. This is why Billy Crystal actually had him direct City Slickers, was because he liked Tremors so much. And Mighty Joe Young, which I remember from when I was a little chitlin. But
it's about a gorilla?
Yes. But yeah, so the tagline is the monster movie that breaks new ground. Get it? Very clever.
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. Pretty good.
Hick Handyman, Val McKee, and Earl Bassett.
Is it Candyman?
Hick Handyman, which I think is rude. Val McKee and Earl Bassett can barely eke out a living in the Nevada hamlet of... Who the fuck wrote this? They're going...
trying to eat pie.
We're trying to church it up, dirt.
Yeah, they definitely picked out a thesaurus for the synopsis. Are living in the Nevada hamlet of perfection, so they decide to leave town despite an admonition from a shapely seismology co-ed who's picking up odd readings on her equipment. Before long, Val and Earl discover what's responsible for those readings. 30-foot-long carnivorous worms with a proclivity for sucking their prey underground.
Off.
Pretty much.
I've gotten a few strange readings off of my equipment before, you know what I'm saying?
I don't.
I don't know either.
Yeah. I think we'd all like to know that. John, unpack it.
John, you shouldn't be ashamed. That's all natural. The movie, as you said earlier, stars Kevin Bacon as Valentine McKee, Fred Ward as Earl Bassett, Finn Carter as Rhonda LeBeck, Michael Gross as Burt Gummer, Reba McEntire, I'm a survivor, as Heather Gummer, Victor Wong as Walter Jane, Ariana Richards from Jurassic Park as...
That's the little girl?
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Mindy Sterngood. And some other people.
And the store
Tony
owner
Gennaro as Miguel
was in Three Ninjas, right? That's the grandpa from Three Ninjas?
Yeah.
Yeah, so originally they wanted the actor who played Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid to play this role, and he wanted too much money because he was hella famous from Karate Kid at that point. So they were like, oh no, we're not going to do that. But what I love about this cast, and part of what I love about this movie in general, is how diverse this cast is, especially for an early 90s movie.
I mean, would you say it has a specific kind of quality? Like a real Pacino kind of quality?
Oh, it's got a great cast.
Yeah.
And I always forget about that until I watch it. Like, I forget that they have Chang's like general store at this place, and outside of having
general store,
I think no black people. It's a pretty diverse cast. But we do have a famous country singer. So.
What was?
I don't know what point you're trying to make there. Let's move away.
Say we can make a quick detour there. But like the first place that I remember Reba McEntire is from Little Rascals, because she's the Indy 500 driver at the very end who like gives them the trophy.
Oh,
because they think that she's a man the whole time.
yeah.
And then they find out that it's Reba McEntire.
Yeah, at the time women didn't have licenses, so. From one skin to the next, baby. Welcome to Boys and Beef.
Was it one of those Einhorn Finkel situations?
Yeah.
Finkel's Einhorn.
Tucked it
Einhorn is
back.
Finkel. Yeah.
Had a little
My
gonzo on the
family
back.
were diehard Reba the Show fans. So, and I'm not being sarcastic about that. We watched a fuck ton of that, and that was actually how I was outside of. I mean, I had heard her music because my family was also a huge country music family when I was young. So I was already a big fan of Reba before the show, and then the show. To me, I've always seen her as an actor slash musician, and I've always loved her. So, and then seeing her in this, it totally made sense to me. But I guess when she was put up for the role, the director was like, I don't want to do that because she's a musician, and I hate it when musicians or other people like try to pretend that they're actors. And then she auditioned, and he was like, no, actually, you're just a really fucking good actor. So yeah, you're perfect for the part.
Yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah, and then Kevin Bacon, like you said, he was coming off I would say the success of Friday the 13th, but no, I don't think his career really launched from that movie. But yeah, Footloose. And he did this basically just because he needed the money. And at the time, his wife, I don't know if he was married to Kira Sedgwick at this time. It is Kira Sedgwick that he's married to, right?
I have no idea.
Pretty sure. But his wife, whoever he was married to at the time, was pregnant with his first kid. And so he went out to do this, and they had to install it, and they had like filmed it, out in the middle of nowhere basically. And they had to install like a phone on set so that he could be in contact with his wife. His son was born the last day that they were shooting the movie.
Oh shit.
Yeah, so pretty crazy. But then once the movie came out, he did very similar to someone like David Lynch in Dune, was like, I fucking hate that movie. Don't ask me about it, and I'm never going to talk about it in interviews.
That's
Or like
crazy.
Paul Rudd for Curse of Michael Myers, like, just, I'm never going to talk about it. And then in hindsight, 20 years later or whatever, 30 years later, they go, actually, I love that movie. And now Bacon has said it's one of his all-time favorite movies in general, and also probably the most fun that he's ever had making a movie. And that he since then has found that he, even without realizing it, has like tried to make his other film set experiences as fun as making Tremors was. But I think everybody is fantastic in this movie. Fred Ward, I think, actually is better than Kevin Bacon in the movie. Like, I love Fred Ward in this movie.
Is that his like right hand man?
Yeah. And I strive for all my friendships to be as like wholesome and genuine seeming as the friendship between them in this movie. Like from the get go, they just have that banter where I'm like, this totally reminds me of me and the boys. Like if we were garbage men or handymen.
The part where they're trying to leave, and like the person who's like down the street is like, but I need help setting up my kiln for my pottery thing. There'll be free beer, and like you just see them driving away, and they're like, can't believe we turned down free beer, like, and super excited about it. I thought this shit was super funny.
There are a ton of great, like almost, it reminds me of a Spielberg edit. I mean, it's something that he invented, but that whole, somebody says a line that points you in one direction, and then you immediately cut to like the exact opposite thing for comedic effect. In Indiana Jones, there's one scene in one of the movies. There's one scene where Harrison Ford is like, "Oh yeah, my like so and so instructor guy is like, he can blend in anywhere, and he knows all the languages of all the foreign countries." And then it cuts to the guy, and he's just like, "Can somebody help me? Does anybody speak English?" And in this, you get like
Winston.
and then you get Kevin Bacon telling Fred Ward like, "Oh man, this garbage picking, like we got to get better than this. Like we got to set our sights higher." And then it immediately cuts to a septic tank thing, and they're literally pumping shit. And then later on, you get like when the graboid busts through the canal thing, and Fred Ward's up there, like, or Kevin Bacon's up, like, looking at the rest of its body, and the seismologist goes, "This has got to be the greatest zoological discovery in like 100 years," and then just goes up to him and he's like, "I found the ass end." And that's the first thing, is that I think this movie as a comedy is pretty fucking hilarious. Like, it blew me away that a lot of the reviews were like, yeah, as a comedy it fails, it's barely funny. As a horror movie it fails, it's not scary. And I'm like, yeah, maybe the horror stuff as an adult obviously doesn't get to me, but as a kid it freaked me the fuck out. And I think that's just because, to me, as a kid, practical effects always just felt like that thing is real. And I think the practical effects in this movie, for the budget that they had, are pretty phenomenal.
I feel like I disagree with that because you never feel like anyone's safe. They always feel like they're in danger.
I think
The
there's
scene
a
with
ton
the-
of tension in the movie. Like
Yeah.
the whole movie is tension.
The scene with the older couple where he's getting sucked away and she's like
It
screaming.
made me so sad when
Yeah.
because the thing that this movie does so well is it makes you like almost every character who is in danger outside of Melvin, who is just an annoying piece of shit for the entire movie, and everybody knows it.
Is that
They're
the
always-
kid?
Yeah. But outside of him, you like or love everybody, and so whenever anybody's in danger or being, chased by the graboid or whatever, you're like, no. Even with that couple, you get the brief little conversation with them in the back of the car where they're just chatting with each other about, and the husband's like, oh man, the cinder blocks, like, and they're like, what, why don't we just keep the roof off of our place so we can stare at the stars? And you're like, oh, I really like this couple. I wonder what, like, if they're gonna join the main. Nope, immediately dead.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure to save on budget, they go the Jaws route and do a lot of just not showing you the creature until
The third
quarter way to
act, yeah.
midway through the movie. And again, it comes down to this. I don't really know like where I fall on this discussion about a movie like this where the intention was fully to keep it a secret, basically, and surprise the audience as to what was causing the deaths. That scene with the couple and one of the earlier scenes with the seismologist getting chased to her truck weren't originally in the movie, and the idea was going to be that like when you saw the guy up on the tower who was dehydrated and you saw like the mutilated animals and stuff, there was going to be like a question of, oh, is this a person doing this? Do we have a serial killer in perfection? And that was going to be the whole discussion. And then midway through the movie, it was going to be like, bam, actually, this is a horror movie and there's a monster.
Worms.
Yeah, and I love that idea, but on the other side of that, I understand. A studio is like, if we're gonna get people to come out and see this movie, they need to know that it's a monster movie, because that's going to get a lot of people who would otherwise not come see this.
Or if you market it
come
as
see
something
it.
else and then it's not what you market it as, people are going to get pissed, and that's
I mean,
happened to us.
we've seen it 1,000 times.
Yeah, so I'm always like, I love that idea of keeping it a secret and having us get surprised halfway through, but that's always, I just don't think that's something that necessarily works for a marketing department.
It does a pretty good job. I mean, yeah, we know because we are aware of this movie, but I was trying to think of like, hey, what if this was my first time watching it? Like, you have no idea what's going on. And then just like them, you see this snake-like thing, and you're like, oh, that's fucking weird.
Mhm.
Like, you have no idea that it's going to be attached to this giant worm's mouth.
Yeah.
I feel like didn't we talk about a movie recently where I was saying the same thing, where it was like, oh, I love how it leads you to think it's one thing and then it switches. I think it was something we were talking about last week, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But
That sounds familiar.
yeah, but I do really like a movie that tries to do that, where it tries to lead you into thinking that it's one type of movie and then switches on you. But I do think that the fact that they keep the graboids relatively secret, one, builds a ton of suspense, and then when they're finally revealed, I think the reveal makes them extra gross and shocking when you finally see the whole thing, especially since, again, to save money, they were like, we can't have these giant worms constantly jumping out of the ground, so what if we had it have smaller snake-like things that come out of its mouth? So for the whole first third to half of the movie, you think that those are the monsters, are these snake things, and even when they find the one that's wrapped around the back of the truck, they're like, oh, this must be some sort of mutant snake, and they think like, oh, this is the monster. There's a bunch of these like weird snake things out there. That would be scary enough. And then when that thing jumps out and you see that it's this giant sandworm with a bunch of these things coming out of it, it's pretty horrifying. It scared the shit out of me as a kid. And also, they constantly talk about how bad they smell, which I think is a great element that, like, as a movie watcher, you're not getting that experience, but in your head you can think of like, what's the most disgusting thing I can think of, like, smell wise. I always imagine them smelling like rotten pumpkin or like yams, but that's just because I think that's what their guts look like. So I always imagine them smelling like rotten, like, gourds or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like I've been rambling about this movie.
Or shit.
What do you guys think of it?
I mean, like, the effects work is fantastic. Like, I love anytime you can really pull off and make it believable when there's like the ground is like rolling towards something. Like, they have like that scene where it's chasing them under the ground and it's like picking up all those planks and going like this. That shit like is like super creepy, and like they do it to a really great effect. There's no like seams that you can see or point and be like, oh, I can see like a wire or something that's causing this to happen. And it's before a computer could have done that. So they found a way to do that.
Yeah, they
practically, which
they
is
just
super cool.
pulled a buoy behind a pickup truck.
Yeah,
under the dirt, and that's how they got like the rolling under the dirt
All right.
effect. Yeah,
it works super well.
Yeah, that's super cool. And then I still don't know how they did it, but the like POV shots of the graboids like digging through the dirt, yeah, they look so cool still, even today. And I'm sure it's a super simple effect. However they pulled it off, but I couldn't find any information online about exactly how they did it. I'm sure that I know there are Tremors documentaries, but I haven't checked any of them out.
And sequels, which I've never seen.
I've never seen a single sequel or the show. And then there was that pilot that was filmed with Kevin Bacon that never turned into a show, which I think is insane.
It's crazy too that Sci-Fi passed it up.
Yeah.
I almost think that if there hadn't been a ton of shit sequels to this movie, then that Kevin Bacon return would have really had an impact, and it would have been greenlit, without a moment's hesitation, and that we would have seen that show. But I think because Sci-Fi especially has probably been like, okay, we've done 5 or 6 of these movies and they've been increasingly terrible from what I've heard and read. I haven't seen them, so maybe they're a total blast, but I know Kevin Bacon has a line in this, 2 lines in this, where he's like, he says to Fred Ward at one point, like for all you know, they could fly. And then at the end, when it goes off the cliff, he's like, can you fly now, motherfucker, or whatever?
I think eventually they do fly.
They do fly.
And they do walk.
They fly now.
Yeah.
I think it's like in the second or third one. It turns out that they're like a xenomorph, where they have like a life cycle where they start out as the graboid worm, and then they evolve into these. I think they're called like ass blasters.
Yeah,
they turn into like these walking dinosaur looking things.
That's a real thing. Those beetles that like have explosive asses.
Yeah, and then they turn into like flying things and go completely off into a crazy realm. But
yes, my very first experience with Tremors was similar to your, like, how you used to do movies, where you would like you wouldn't be able to watch something, so you would go and someone would explain the plot to you. Mm-hmm. My cousin had seen what I believe to have been either Tremors 2 or 3, not realizing that there was a 1 and 2, and explained the plot to me as if it were the first one, and mentioned like that there were graboids and then there were ass blasters and all these other things. I'm like, what the fuck did you watch? And then eventually went back and watched Tremors and was like, none of this makes any sense, but okay, I'm happy with what's here.
Turns out it was just a home video of his dad. He was a real graboid and an ass blaster.
I know that Fred Ward carries over at least into one of the sequels.
I saw him on the cover of a few of the movies.
Yeah, and then Gross carries over, I think, through all of them. I think he's the only one that's through all of them. The guy with the mustache, Reba's husband or whatever. He carries through I think all of them and the TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and he was also the only cast member to show up to like the 30th anniversary party that they did in the town where they filmed the movie.
Oh really?
They did like a special screening, and he was the only cast member to show up.
Don't say he's got much else to do.
But the movie that I would compare this to the most, in terms of like the way, like how tight I feel the script is and the concept and the way it's executed, would be the remake of The Blob. For some reason, I feel like these 2 movies would make a really great double feature. They're also really good cases of. Huh?
The one with Dylan in it? Is that his name? Matt Dillon?
Yeah, the only Blob remake.
That was only the one.
I think so, unless I know there's Beware the Blob, with that cool theme song. Beware of the Blob, it creeps.
Did we watch that?
I think you did at some point or something. But yeah, it reminds me of the Blob. I think just also because it's a rare example of reviving the like 50s B movie thing, because this definitely has a like 50s B movie feel. The only difference here is that nobody knows what the fuck is going on, including the scientist, as opposed to a typical 50s B movie where you get several long scenes of scientists standing around talking about all of their theories and with the science behind it. In this, they're just like, I have no fucking clue what's going on, and that's what makes it scary.
This is where it succeeds, is that there's no like exposition on this creature, and like every other like creature feature, I mean, to an extent, will have these like long scenes where there's either an explanation as to why it's supposed to be scary, or why like it's like actual like the zoology of it or whatever, like what it is, and explaining like how it's supposed to be beaten or whatever. And in this one, you're the only person who would be like the intelligence, the science person, is completely unaware of that this was going on, and it's just like, I can tell you that there are more than this one that we found, and then shit goes further awry from there.
Yeah.
Which I think adds to the scary, adds to the funny, and it also adds to like the reality of it. You know, as this like character didn't know these existed before, so they're not all of a sudden magically going to just have some crazy knowledge about this existing later down the line.
Yeah, and I think, and they even go through like all of their potential theories and kind of joke about it at one point. One of my favorite lines in the movie is Fred Ward when he's like, "Yeah, my vote's for space. No way, these are local boys." And yeah, so he's like, "Oh, it could be space." And then when the more like conspiracy theory oriented couple, Reba and Gross, are like, "Oh, it could be like a mutated snake, like some government experiment or whatever." But I think all of the elements are set up so well with, oh, okay, you totally understand where the danger of them being out in the middle of nowhere is. Like, there are towns like this that exist where there are just 14 people that live there, and it's out in the fucking middle of nowhere with no access to anything. And some people like to live that way. And and they explain, oh, we have mountains on both sides of us. And so there's that. And then they have to just kind of, by trial and error throughout the movie, figure out what the weakness is and what the abilities of this creature are. After enough people have been got by it, they, start to realize like, oh, okay, so it's when they see the actual creature, they go, oh, it doesn't have any eyes. And so they have to start figuring out, okay, well then how does it know where we are and how does it move around? They start piecing together, oh, it's because of vibration. It can sense vibration. So there's all of that. And yeah, they have to figure out different ways. And I love a movie where they go literally from like plan A to plan Z throughout the course of the movie, because every plan that they have gets eventually sabotaged in some way and they have to pivot it. Every time you think like, oh fuck yeah, they're getting out of this, something happens. Either they come up with a plan of having the graboids swallow the pipe bombs, and then the one graboid gets too smart and spits it back out at them and blows up all the rest of their bombs, or you get them in the trailer and they're going and the graboids figure out to dig a trench. And that's another element that I think works great, is they realize that the graboids are learning and getting smarter as they go and outwitting them at every turn. And so the humans have to band together and try to outsmart this insane thing that they don't understand. And yeah, I don't understand where people's initial reaction was in terms of this like not being scary or anything, because really, yeah, I think the tension holds up super well. And I've seen this movie a ton of times, and I still like when there are those scenes where the girl on the pogo stick, like stuff like that, I know what's going to happen, but just knowing what that means and knowing how scary that is for the people involved, and I care about them. So
yeah, I think the tension is really where this movie shines, and it starts within like the first 5 minutes of the movie and then just goes. Like, it never really stops.
Yeah, there's like no wasted time.
The whole movie
in the
is like
no
the
fat.
third act.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And it's also that, right in the sweet spot as far as like runtime is concerned too. So like it doesn't overstay its welcome either, which I think is a testament to a really tight script, a really well acted film, especially for like being in that weird, like almost B movie creature feature, horror and comedy, like mixing all those things together.
Yeah.
And it just does a really good job of blending all of that, keeping it just long enough to where it keeps it's like immediately grabs your attention, graboids your attention, and then just runs with it and never lets it go until the movie's over.
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost a perfect movie. Really, the main thing that didn't work for me on this rewatch is the score. And I found out through doing research that part of that is because there were two composers, because the studio felt the exact same way. So the first half of the movie, you'll notice, is a lot of the harmonica and the more like country western, almost like goofy Beverly Hillbillies music, which I guess fits the characters. But the whole time I was just like, this is way too goofy. It's just like, and I was like, I just cannot get into like the tension of this movie. And so about halfway through, you notice that there's a shift into more like dramatic music, and that's literally because they just got a different composer involved, and then didn't credit the second guy. Yeah, which is shitty, but
classic Hollywood.
Yeah, so it's like outside of that, and maybe I feel like while there isn't a lot of fat, I do think that there's only so much you can do with the concept, and by the end of it, I was starting to feel a bit like, okay, let's wrap this up.
It gets repetitive.
Yeah, because eventually you've gone through, like I said, they go through plan A to Z, and by plan T, I was like, okay, you've been sabotaged enough. Let's let you guys have a happy ending or escape or something like that. So
I really like the scene with Reba and her husband in the basement. I was like, oh fuck, like this is really good because I had forgotten what happens in that scene. And I was like, oh, they're definitely getting eaten.
yeah,
I thought they were dead for sure, and so I love the tension there. Really, my biggest problem with the movie is that pogo stick scene because there's no way that fucking pogo stick is standing straight up after someone jumps off of it. You know what I mean?
It's getting sucked.
Yeah, I was like, that's a bunch of bullshit.
that you're like, I'll buy giant worms with little worms coming out of them, but that pogo stick standing straight up.
And that Ford battery would have died real quick. There's no way it was still playing music. So just tighten it up, guys. Tighten it up.
Get your shit together.
Tighten it up.
Get your shit
23 years
together.
later.
Yeah.
I thought interesting. One of the
33 years later.
one of the titles, this went through several titles. Originally, it was supposed to be called Land Sharks, which is terrible.
Yeah.
And it was renamed because I think a character in some other movie or TV show had the name Land Sharks. Then it was going to be called Beneath Perfection, which is cool, but I don't think has really like the
terror.
Well, and also it sounds like it's for a much more serious, dramatic movie. Beneath the Planet of Perfection.
Of like a prostitute.
Yeah. And then they were going to call it
Girl.
Dead Silence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I thought was hilarious, especially with how radically different the Dead Silence we finally got was.
It is also a kind of also like a early comedy version of A Quiet Place.
I was gonna say it fits into that whole like Don't Breathe, A Quiet Place, like where it's all about a certain sense. Like
Yeah,
you have
Bird Box.
exactly, something that you can no longer do that's important to being a human being is like, oh, we can't walk on the ground. I do really like that pole vaulting scene too. I think it's really cute when they're all like pole vaulting in unison. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that it was going to be called Dead Silence. But I think Tremors fits. I just wish that somebody had an excuse to say the movie. I think we just got way too lucky with the new Mission Impossible.
Within the first fucking 5 minutes, buddy.
Yeah, we were.
I don't think we told you, but we were joking about like they better say the name in the movie because they have for at least the last 5.
Yeah, so I was like, if they say it in the new Mission Impossible, we have to point at the screen. And so as soon as they said Dead Reckoning in the movie, we were like... But yeah, anyway, I, as a kid, thought this was a really fucking scary movie. As an adult, I think it's hilarious. I think it's
a fun ass movie.
It's a total
With
it's a total ass blast. And... but for some reason still doesn't make me want to watch any of the sequels. I think just because I do love this movie so much that unless...
I want to just to see how far off the rails it goes. Like, I haven't
how
seen
far
a lot
from
of
God's
the...
light they stray.
I haven't seen a lot of the Hellraisers, but I want to because I want to see how fucking ridiculous it gets.
Yeah, and I mean, I watch plenty of, campy shit, B horror stuff that I have a blast with, and I think it's just because I have such a love for the original Tremors.
Yeah.
I've always been scared to do it, which is similar to my whole hang up with the movie we're going to be talking about in our main episode, Dune, where Adrian was like, how the hell, you read the book, you've seen the new one, how the hell have you never seen that one? I was like, because I fucking love Dune, and I fucking love David Lynch, and I heard this movie was terrible. So I was like, I just don't want to mar my perception of that person by watching it. But
have you seen any more of the Tremors movies or the show or anything?
No, just this one.
Well, there you go.
Well,
Anybody
if you
out there
have and
has,
you're listening, let us know if there's a specific one where you're like, dude, there's this great moment where the one dude, let us know. I want to know.
Cool. Well, we're going to keep going with Alphabet Roulette, and we're going to move into spinning the wheel of endless possibilities.
We've got a very rare double entry.
A double down. A KFC double
KFC
down.
A double down.
We've
Oh.
upgraded to a double down.
Yeah, so it's you. Obviously, if you're familiar with the alphabet, then that's what's next.
Wait.
And John and I picked.
Upgrades. We've got Upgrade. We've got Unbreakable. Kimmy Schmidt. And then we've also got Upgrade, but this one is the one that Tone picked.
Yeah, we're doubling down.
All right.
Not a lot of you options that we gave a shit about. And Upgrade is pretty good.
So one is
from what I
Upgrade
remember,
the original cut, and one is Upgrade the theatrical cut.
right?
All right. Let's give that the old spin.
Yeah. Which for me was almost like a modern retelling of Frankenstein. So I'm interested to revisiting that.
It don't matter because we're watching Unbreakable.
What are the odds?
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
1 out
well.
of 3. I'm still gonna.
Well, no, because there's more than 3 on there.
I always forget that you add extras, and also I'm bad at math, so it wouldn't matter. I'm still gonna watch Upgrade, but I'm pretty excited about Unbreakable.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it?
It's been a long ass
Wait,
time.
no.
since-
Is that the one where that's the first one with Bruce Willis where he becomes a
Yeah.
superhero? Oh, okay, no, I have seen it.
Okay.
So you haven't seen Glass?
Glass, yeah.
I mean,
Well, drop the GL.
because it's just ass.
Yeah.
But I really do like Unbreakable quite a bit, and I am a big fan of Split, and we'll leave it there.
I'm a big fan of Kimmy Schmidt, so it should be a fun week.
Yeah, one of us has to show up having just watched all of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for our bonus episode. If you're interested in our main episode, like Anthony mentioned, we were talking about Dune and Primer for our last Sci-Fi Shameful Misses episode. So check that out if you haven't, and we'll see you next week with Unbreakable.
Keep it creepy.